So we're just going to jam for a minute while people shuffle in. So enjoy him.
Enjoy him. He works here. I mean.
Thanks, dude. Appreciate it. Let's see.
What do you call that?
I don't know, dude.
Cool, man. Yeah, well, it's a tune.
We got a little guitar up in the
I like it.
room upstairs, and I just put that together.
It's very
Three chords.
Yeah.
Sounds fun.
I dig it.
All right, so for anyone who doesn't know, this is Mark Lettieri.
Hey guys. Thank you. Everybody's got their food and everything. I love that. I need a plate or something, man. I'll just have, I got my coffee. That's all I need. Very good.
So I brought you on today with the Talks team because, well, I wanted to understand where you're coming from and how you got so stinking good on the guitar.
Well, I can answer one of those things confidently. where am I coming from? Well, I literally just got off the tour bus. You picked me up in the parking lot.
Yeah, I had to sneak into the Orpheum Theater parking lot and convince them all that I was important enough to get a park there.
Right. But, you know, this has just been a passion of mine since I was a kid. I think I started playing at 11 or 12, just banging around on my dad's old acoustic guitar.
Okay.
And this was probably the mid-'90s. I don't want to date myself, but I guess I just did. So what was on the radio then? It was like a cross between Soundgarden and Stone Temple Pilots and Smashing Pumpkins and stuff like that, and then stuff that I didn't really like.
Yeah.
So I was into the grunge thing, and that was some of the first stuff that I was learning on guitar, you know.
Okay. There we go. Some Nirvana going.
I remember the first time I learned a power chord from a teacher. I was like, oh, that's rock and roll.
Yeah,
we did it. We've achieved rock and roll.
You did it.
And the first, I remember my friend, when we were kids, you know, he got a distortion pedal. And he was the first of our friends
kind,
to get.
you know?
It was a Boss DS1, those little orange ones. And the fact that he could go, you know, and then he would step on the pedal and it would sound like a fuzz tone. That was like, wow, we've achieved. Exactly. Yeah, we have magic, you know. So that was me as a kid. And the more serious I got about guitar, I started listening to more guitar players, Jimi Hendrix and Edward Van Halen and Stevie Ray Vaughan and Eric Johnson and Joe Satriani, and I mean the list kind of goes all over the map from then. And then I decided somewhere around the age of 19 or 20 that I should maybe try to do this as a job.
Nice. Yeah.
and that's why we're here.
So I want to understand that trajectory a little better. You picked up a guitar around 12.
Right.
What happened, like at what point were you playing Stevie Ray Vaughan competently? Like what point were you like, I can play anything of his?
Well, I don't know if anyone can play Stevie Ray Vaughan competently.
Fair enough.
Except for Stevie himself. But, you know, I got really passionate about it very quickly. As soon as I started practicing, I realized it was not some hobby that I was going to occasionally do every now and then.
Yeah.
I mean, I was picking up the guitar and practicing guitar more than I was doing homework.
Yeah.
Much to the disappointment of my mother. My dad kind of didn't really care as much, but my mom, I remember, like, punishment for me was like, we're going to take the guitar away and put it in another room. I mean, I could just go get it, I guess, but that was like, there was like, okay, no, like, we're taking it, putting it away.
Nice.
And so it was clear that it was sort of an obsession. And I would, you know, this was back when they were putting guitar tablature on the internet.
Yeah.
You could download guitar tablature. And so for me, that was really cool because I could kind of get my fingers around some tunes that I was learning and listening to. But then I just would spend a lot of time playing along to the radio. I would put on the alternative rock station or the classic rock station, just start jamming along to whatever I heard and just training my ear. And the older I got, the better I got at it. I would start transcribing stuff from CDs and, you know, my favorite parts of my favorite solos and riffs and things like that. And then I always had a band to play everything in. I always had a band with some friends. You know, we would play in garages mostly. We would occasionally do the backyard party in Silicon Valley.
I remember those, playing Green Day. And
oh, yeah.
I was living in Reno, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we did. Our set list was always kind of weird. It was like a mix between, like, Third Eye Blind and Sublime, and then, like, Hendrix, maybe some Chili Peppers.
Sure. Well, you're like,
then, like,
the amount of
Enter
things you know when
Sandman
you're
or
that
something.
young.
Yeah, we just liked anything that had guitar playing in it. Anything that we could play, you know, from start to finish, we would put it in the set list.
Okay. Well, what was like the age range when you were doing those bands?
Oh, 15, 16, you know.
Good old garage band years.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Well,
Used to wear a lot of Hawaiian shirts on stage. That was like a thing in the Bay Area, you know. Like,
was that the whole band or just you?
I think occasionally we all did. There are photos somewhere. You asked for photos of my youth, but I didn't have any on my computer at the time. But maybe I'll send them to you later on.
Yeah, we'll maybe post them in the comments.
Oh boy. Yeah.
So I'm interested to know. So you went to college, but not as a guitar professional.
Right. I have Well, I make this joke all the time. I have a BS in BS, as they say. I have a bachelor's of science in journalism with an emphasis in advertising and public relations.
Yeah.
Check that out.
So I've always thought that was really interesting because how many famous guitarists do you know? Well, first of all, they have a bachelor's degree.
Well, I don't know. Funny, the guitar player from The Offspring, we're talking about grunge, I think is like a biologist or some sort of...
PhD in microbiology.
There it is. Okay,
PhD
very
in
good. And I'm
microbiology.
sure you all know Brian May
Yeah.
from Queen is an actual astrophysicist.
I love that.
So I just had a PR degree. But,
When you compare yourself to those,
well, it was the family business. Like, like I said, I grew up in Silicon Valley. My parents worked in tech, in PR. I remember my mom used to work for Apple in like the late 80s, mid to late 80s. So I remember getting the first Apple II computer at my house. I remember the first Apple Mac. It wasn't even a MacBook. It was just like a brick. It was like a textbook with a ball in the middle. Did anybody have one of those? No?
I've seen them.
Gosh, this is like, wow, relics of the past. Okay. There may be, I don't know, they're going to come around. It'll be like a hipster indie thing where somebody starts using like the super old.
Yeah, you said you didn't want to date yourself, but you keep doing
I know,
yourself.
but, well, I was young. I was like 7 or
Sure.
something. But, so anyway, so that was it. My folks worked in tech. They did PR. I said, cool, I can do that. You know, maybe I'll check that out. And I had an interest in it. I liked working with people and obviously running my mouth. And so I found a college that had a good program for that and did that. And I was also an athlete in high school and college. I ran track, yeah.
Track, that's right.
Which is a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
I'm long since retired from that. So that was what brought me to college. It wasn't guitar.
Yeah.
It was like guitar was the thing I loved to do more than anything else, but professionally was only something that existed on the weekends.
Well, what level of guitarist were you when you entered college? Like, were you anywhere close to where you're at now?
No. Well, I mean, I don't know, but no. I think hopefully I'm better than I was when I was 18.
Sure. Yeah.
But the drive was there, the passion was there, and I think the stuff that I was listening to around that time informed kind of the sound that I have now. Mm-hmm. I was getting more into funk and R&B and soul and things like that. And,
that's why a lot of what you hear in the baritone session.
Yeah, that whole record was me trying to make a Prince record on a baritone guitar.
Nice.
So maybe I succeeded, probably not. But so a lot of that influence came from what I was discovering as I was leaving high school and getting into college. And that's when I started realizing that I could try to do this for a living.
Yeah. Did you have any other passions that were close to as strong? Like maybe you would have been
Well, sports was.
Okay.
Track and field was really important to me, but I basically took that as far as I physically could.
Yeah.
And then once I think my heart and my mind quit before my body did with sports.
Okay.
So finishing up TCU has a Division I track team, and I was like a very small fish in a very big pond there.
Yeah.
And from going from high school where I was kind of a big fish in a sort of small pond, and then you get to college and everyone's like really, really good, and you're like, I'm just happy to be here, coach. But I did my 4 years. I wanted to do it, and I wasn't going to quit. But the passion for that kind of started to dissolve. Mm-hmm. And of course, I wasn't going to do it professionally or anything. I mean, how do if you're going to be a professional track athlete, it's like you better go to the Olympics like tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or something. So the music thing just kind of like really sort of took over everything.
Did you avoid your college homework as well to play?
Yeah. I graduated. I did it in 4 years,
Nice.
Probably could have done a little bit better. But yeah, I got my degree, I got out, and the funny thing is, it was like towards the end of my senior year, I kind of had forgot to like apply for jobs. And so when I started sending my resume to some of these PR companies in town, I live in Dallas-Fort Worth area, so I was sending my resume to some of these companies like, oh, we've already hired everybody. What were you doing the last couple months? I was like, I'm in a band, pretty good,
Well, little do they know, you could have skyrocketed their brands with your guitar playing.
Maybe so I can manage their Instagram account.
There we go.
So I didn't really have a job out when I graduated college, and so I joined a Texas country band and played country music, and through that band, ended up with a little bit of a sort of like part-time day gig working for a very small marketing company that did imprinted sportswear and pens and stuff like with with people's logos on it. So,
well, can I put you on the spot and ask you to play a little bit of that sound from the country music you'd play?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, like this kind of music, it was not that. It was more like Texas country, which is a lot of like. Lot of that, and so I wasn't chicken picking and doing the Nashville thing really. I don't even know if they had a tune that was like that. I think the other ones were more just like it was the same three chords, just faster, and then with a different hat or something. And gosh, they're probably going to see this. Anyway, I'm actually still in touch with one of the fellas, and we have a great relationship, and I'm sure he would probably think this is funny. I hope so. But it was fun, and it was a really good learning experience because it was the first time I'd really ever played music outside of where I was living. Our first gig was, I think it was the second gig I did with the band was in Maine. So I was like, whoa, we're getting on a plane, and I'm going to go to Maine, which I've never been to, and I'll play guitar. I'm a real guitar player. I went on a tour. It was one show, right?
Yeah.
And we went to Maine, and we played at this honky tonk in Portland, Maine, and Bud Light was there randomly, like filming some odd commercial. They had this series of commercials where they would just go to bars and ask people to tell embarrassing stories. I don't know what it was, and then they would put it on their website or something. So they suckered me into talking about some time I went skinny dipping or something like that. And it's gone. I looked for it. It's gone. Yeah, it's totally
I was like in the head to go search for that.
Nope, this was 2006. That is long gone, and it never made it onto YouTube, thankfully.
Dang it.
But that was like really cool for me, and like the crowd was responsive, and we had a good time, and so there was those little things, those little kinds of experiences along the way that kind of kept me into it, and then I got a little check at the end of it.
Nice.
Yeah, very little one, but that's what it is,
That reminds me of my computer science experience. Like out of college, like all of a sudden these companies wanted to fly me to their location. I didn't have to pay for it, and it was like I felt like a rock star. In the
sure.
science world.
I know it's kind of and it was never, even early on, of course, it was never really about the money. That was just sort of like a thing that happened at I was like, you wanted to pay me to do this? Like I like doing this. I would have done this anyway.
For free, yeah.
So
chumps.
I suckered them into paying me money.
So that was around the end of your college, like after you'd graduated?
I finished. Yeah, that was the summer after I graduated.
Okay.
And hooked up with these guys, and I met them at a blues jam. I used to go to these blues jams in Texas.
Nice.
Where I was definitely like the youngest guy there. Well, sometimes I was sort of in this weird age range because most of the guys were these older fellas, kind of weekend warrior dudes, and then like some really great local blues musicians, and then like me, 21, kind of like I don't know what I'm doing, like. And then there'd be like the 14-year-old like Stevie Ray Vaughan prodigy kid, whose parents are like,
yes,
take him to all the blues jams, and this is my kid, and they put them on it is his turn to jam now. Everyone respect the prodigy child. I don't know where any of those kids are now. And so I was just like, hey man, I'm here trying to get gigs. I want to do this for a living. What do we do? Oh, okay, play a shuffle. Got it.
I thought it was odd at first, but I just remembered I actually did something just like that in Reno. My guitar teacher brought me to some blues jam at a club.
Yeah, it was a great experience. Getting your ass kicked by a 14-year-old is great.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh man, I need to get this together. So that was actually really good. And then getting your ass kicked by a 64-year-old is also really great too.
Yeah.
So going to jams for me was just a lesson in learning what I didn't know, and just and figuring out that there was a lot of work I needed to do, and but so I'm really thankful for those kinds of years of grinding.
Yeah.
I could say.
How long do you think it took before you were kind of close to where you're at now? every year?
Well, yeah, I guess I notice some change in my playing every now and then, and then sometimes I regress, as anyone does if they're working towards art in some way. But it's interesting just to kind of hear how, if I listen back to myself of like, I mean, even if I listen to a record that I recorded of my own music from 2011, I try to play those songs and I'm like, man, I don't even play like that anymore.
Yeah.
You know, which is odd because when I go to a gig and people ask for those tunes, I got to play them.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be a bit of a challenge.
It's kind of like a time capsule, you know?
A little bit. And I like that. That's what I like about making records, is that it cements a part of your sound in a specific place and time, and then you can move on to something else.
Yeah. I think I've seen a recording of one of my favorite bands is RX Bandits.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of those guys.
Yeah, they're old school. I don't think they play together anymore, but they their sound shifted from this kind of grungy kind of ska. You know, it was just on the upbeat, but it wasn't. I mean, it was as ska as anything else was in that time. And then they've totally switched gears to this really like progressive, really fast, really instrumental songs. And I heard this like recording. I don't know if it was on YouTube or what, where you know, some fan who knew all their old work back when they were just a completely different band was calling out for him to, hey, play this song from. And he says, no, that's your song now. You can have that.
Oh,
one.
Wow, that's a good cop out. I should use that one. That's a good one. Right.
Oh man, well, how did that morph into like Snarky Puppy and where you're at now?
So the Snarky Puppy thing was a really unique situation. So they were kind of like a college band, just at a different college. They went to, a lot of the guys went to this school called the University of North Texas, which is in Denton, Texas. I was 45 minutes south at Texas Christian University, TCU, go Frogs. I hope our football team is killing this year. Every now and then we're really good. Sometimes we're not. So anyway, they had been around for maybe 2 or 3 years, kind of playing the local scene, and I met some of the guys going to jam sessions again in Dallas, but jam sessions of a different sort. These were like gospel, jazz, R&B, fusion jam sessions, which was like what I was all about at that time, you know, grooving and stuff like that. And so Denton, at this music school up there, was a lot of the players would come down and go to these jams in Dallas, where I was coming through, because I was doing a lot of gospel music at the time. Yeah. So I was always in Dallas doing that. And that's where I started meeting some of the guys. And they were just like a cool band that I liked. I was like, wow, these guys are really good. Like dang. You know? And so I would go see them. Occasionally I would be in a band that would share a bill with them or something. And
that was when they were called Snarky Puppy?
Yeah, there was definitely, it's been Snarky Puppy from the beginning, as far as I know. I think the band was started in 2004, and then I started hearing about them in about 2007. And then in 2008, I had done some session work with Michael League, the band leader, bass player. So we had a relationship, and he was like, hey man, you know, we're doing this record, you want to come in and just like play some funk guitar for 16 bars on this one tune? And I was like, yeah, of course. So I left. I had just finished a gig somewhere with somebody and drove to the studio at like 2 in the morning or something. Yeah. And they fired up a track. I didn't even know if I listened to the whole song. I think they just sort of queued it up with a click, and you know, there was maybe like 2 bars of whatever they had been playing, and then it was the click, and I just went, you know. Just kind of like that. I think there actually were some changes. So I did that, like 4 or 5 stacks of myself doing that, and he was like, "Cool, man, thanks. See you later." And I was like, "We're done? Y'all don't want like a spicy lead guitar?" And they're like, "No, Bob Lanzay's gonna do that." I was like, "Oh, okay, good, yeah, let him do that." You know, so that was my first appearance on a Snarky Puppy project. It was 16 bars of me playing with me. So I didn't even really play with Snarky Puppy. I just played with myself for 16 bars.
Was that just like an audition for you then, or?
Yeah, it was just a session, you know, and I hung out for the rest of the morning. You know, this was probably like 3 a.m. by this time, and just kind of watched them cut and record, and you know, just as a fan, as a fly on the wall. And then about a year, I think it was probably about a year later, Mike called me for some gigs because the two other guitar players, Bob and Chris, just weren't available. And so he sent me like 13 songs of, Snarky Puppy fusion.
Yeah.
And he was like, cool, man, van leaves on Friday, and this was like Tuesday.
Yeah.
And so I was like, put on the headphones and fired up the MP3 player and kind of half-assed read through some charts, and did three gigs with them in New Orleans for some Mardi Gras stuff. And that was the first time I played with them.
Was it like solid after that? Were they like, all right?
Well, yeah. Well, it wasn't that I was their guy. It was that I'm one of the guys now. The band has grown. I mean, the band is a big band. I think they may have started with 7 guys or something. And over the year, Michael's kind of a workaholic, so he'll book gigs no matter if he knows if anyone can actually do them. And most of the time, enough people show up to where there is a band.
Yeah.
And so because of that, we ended up with 3 guitar players, 3 guitar players, 3 drummers, 3 percussionists, 5 keyboard players. One of the keyboard players doubles on trumpet. 4 other horns. What am I missing?
Was Bob Reynolds in at that time?
No, Bob is sort of a later addition,
Okay.
but kind of came in through the same thing. He was friends with Chris Bullock, who is our tenor player, who's been in the band since I think the beginning. And Bob, he was like, hey, we played in LA, and he said, hey, Bob, you want to come sit in on a tune?
Yeah.
And he came in and crushed it, and then
He's Bob Reynolds.
Now he's Bob. Well, he's Bob. He's always been Bob Reynolds.
Yeah.
Maybe he was Robert when he was born or something. But, so that's how he kind of got into the fold. Larnell Lewis, for example, one of our drummers, got in because one of the other drummers couldn't make a session, and so the people that get brought in are people that have everyone in the. What's cool about the band is that everyone has like a really unique sound. So if someone comes in and plays the music and interprets it in their own cool way, it's just another kind of piece of Mike's puzzle that he can kind of fit together. So what's really unique is that if you go see the band on tour, it might be, every 2 weeks it might be a different band.
That's pretty cool.
Michael does every show.
Keeps it pretty fresh.
Yeah, it keeps it fresh, and it's also kind of terrifying for me because we were talking about this in the car. I jump onto this tour after they've already been playing together for 2 weeks, and I'm like thrown into the fire with all this new music that I haven't played live with the band really at all. There's no rehearsals.
Yeah.
We kind of go over some stuff in sound check, and then I go back to the green room and cry. And
Well, that kind of brings me to like one of the questions I had actually prepared for this, which is
okay. None of this was prepared?
None of it.
Wow, you're really good.
No. So one of the questions was you play with all these huge names. You play with surprising number of rappers.
Yeah.
And
you're right.
Maybe you can tell me about that later.
About that.
But one of the questions I had was like, you go in all these sessions. Have you ever just like flubbed it huge, just really messed up and messed up a song?
Well, I've definitely done multiple takes.
Okay.
There are some things I can nail right away. Other things it's like, roll it again.
Yeah.
The rap stuff, a lot of it I do for my home studio.
Okay.
I work with the producer a lot. He's a Texas guy named S1, and he did he's done Eminem and Beyonce, and I think he did Kanye. He did a bunch of really big artists, and he just emails me tracks, and they all have the names are just the names of the track, so it could be like Shoes or whatever, Shoes, 108 BPM, and I don't know who it's for or what's going to happen with it, and he kind of will give me just a general direction of sort of sonically what he's hearing, and then I'll just throw a bunch of ideas on it and email it back.
Like several different
just
versions.
layers and things.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they end up on records.
Nice.
Like I played on it. You guys know Exhibit?
Of course.
Yeah, I played on an Exhibit record from my apartment.
Nice.
He just said, and I didn't know what the tunes were at the time. It just was a beat with some samples, and I played some stuff. He said, give me a melody line here, and I think that was like the only direction that he gave me.
Yeah.
And then it ended up on this Exhibit record.
Nice.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. Do you get your name on the record too, or is it like?
Well, I don't have a physical
actually-
copy of it, but yeah, it's credited.
Okay. Cool.
So that's really cool. But And then I'll go over to his house and we'll do sessions at his house where it's the same vibe. He'll just pull up an 8-bar loop and I'll play whatever I hear and go on to the next 8-bar loop. And so we just sort of catalog all these ideas and then he sends them out to different clients that he's working with.
That's pretty neat.
I mean, that whole, the 50, I played on this 50 Cent track that we probably did in 15 minutes over at his house. It was like a loop.
Yeah.
And I just sort of played a thing. I don't even think I had an amp. I think I plugged straight into the computer. And then he manipulated the tone with some plugins and things.
Nice. Can you give us a taste of that?
I'm trying to remember how it goes. Yeah, there's like a... I don't remember how it goes. Oh, yeah. So that was kind of the part, and it sounded kind of that jangly and janky when I recorded it, kind of on purpose. It was,
yeah.
The beat was kind of herky-jerky kind of vibe. And so I did that, and that was it.
Nice.
Yeah, and then, yeah, it was kind of one of those cool things where it's like one of those things that's great for your resume because it's a 50 Cent track, Eminem sang a thing on it, and
Ooh.
Adam Levine sang the hook.
Every person that gets on there.
So I just put all three of their names on my resume. Maybe that's bad policy, I don't know, but technically they are all on, I did this technically. So for nitpicking, yeah, it's just 50 Cent is the credit, but the other guys are on there too, so. I thought that was, yeah, he told me, he's like, yeah, man, 50's gonna drop this thing, and guess who else is on it? And I was like, what? The guy from The Voice? No, I knew of him from Maroon 5, of course, but so that was cool.
Nice. And so, do you remember? I think I saw Lupe Fiasco on there too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That was. I think that one I did at S1 Studio. I don't remember how that part goes at all.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot. That's the funny thing about session work is people ask me how the songs go, and I'm like, that was 2 years ago. Yeah. I don't know.
15 minutes 2 years ago.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, could you give us a little taste of the gospel music? I'm still kind of curious what that sounded like.
Well, I mean,
at least on the guitar.
Yeah, I can just play some changes for you. So I mean, like, so there's kind of like a style of gospel that's sort of in the guitar community, at least. That there are these guys. Spanky Alford is a guitar player. Jonathan Dubose is another guitar player. These really kind of legendary gospel guitar players who are known for their really nice chord voicings.
Yeah.
Jonathan Dubose is one of my favorites. And he's the first guy I ever heard do something like that. And it just blew my mind. It was like a ballad off of this record that he has called Healing of the Hymns. And that kind of sort of rubato kind of playing with they're jazz chords, like kind of jazz harmony you could consider. And a lot of it comes from like Joe Pass or any of these other kind of jazz players, but I'm
going to be watching the video later, so just so I can see.
Oh, sure. Oh, you want me to turn this way?
Oh, no worries at all.
Okay. Some of it comes from organ players, piano players. A lot of these are kind of piano voicings. And so like that little maneuver I did, I stole from, I didn't steal, I asked a gospel piano player friend of mine to show it to me.
Yeah.
And you just translate it on the guitar.
Well, especially with the tremolo, it kind of sounds like a road.
Yeah, that's sort of a stylistic thing. I need to stop doing it. It's kind of a crutch, to be honest. So, you might end up with where you play a ballad that has those kind of changes in it, or you might play a lot of the gospel stuff that I do. I work with this guy named Kirk Franklin, who's he's kind of a gospel dude, been around forever.
Okay.
And a lot of what I do for him is more like R&B stuff, like 80s. Which is, I love that, that everyone in Toto is like, I love that. So anything they did has influenced anything I do now.
Nice.
And so what's great about gospel music is it's real diverse in a sense. Like you might have to do some rock and roll stuff. You might have to play an acoustic ballad. You might have to play straight up R&B funk like that. You know, you might have to play a bunch of changes in a slow 6/8 kind of thing. You know, I'm still trying to get my hands around it. I wouldn't ever consider myself a pure gospel guitar player. There are definitely plenty of people out there that do it far more legitimately than I do.
Sure. Well, I mean, everyone has their niche.
Sure.
So I'm gonna kind of shift gears, or I guess change chords.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a bad pun. Thank you.
7:30 show is totally different from the 5:30 show. Sip your
I'll be here all week.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to understand. I'm going to put you on the spot for a second, and then I'm going to ask you a question about it. So if you could maybe play us something solo, just anything off the top of your head, nothing you really played before, that's particularly fast.
That's particularly fast?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just solo quickly. Can you just do that? Can I just ask that of you?
You got.
My question will dive right into why I'm asking.
I'll play something funky because I don't know, because I'm staring at a picture of myself looking like I'm in a lot of pain.
Right. We got our monitors up here. Yeah.
I wonder what was happening. That's a great Supro ad though. Look at that.
Yeah. How do you get those faces though?
It was hot in there, I think, maybe. That was from my trio used to have this residency in Dallas where we'd play every week, and it was like great. And then they fired us.
Before you do this, I have kind of funny questions. How important are the faces when you're soloing?
You know what? I make some real stupid faces. You guys probably see, there's a meme going around where it's a bunch of guitar players, but they've replaced the guitars with slugs. And there's like a picture of John Mayer going like, and he's holding a slug. So if somebody wants to put a slug in there, Dwayne Allman's like, oh, the slug.
I'm on it.
That's a dream. I don't know who came up with that.
Well, since we're on the subject, I'm going to ask you to critique. I have just one slide of a grainy picture of me. If you guys can switch sides, can you please critique
put a slug in there.
Yeah.
You look like, it kind of looks like you're about to be like, hey man, I wasn't finished with that.
Yeah.
Like,
well, if you can see,
like the bartender grabbed your beer before you were done and like was taking it away or something.
My hand isn't even in front of the guitar. I don't know. So I think I was just yelling at someone.
Yeah.
That's like my best rock face.
No, if you're gonna open that, you need my keys. Let me get my keys.
All right, switch back. Get out of that.
All right.
I don't want to look at that.
All right, this is fun. I like Google. You guys are cool. All right. I probably played this before, but I don't know. Cool. I ran out of speed. Ran out of ideas. I'm also going to put a hole in your stage here.
No, no worries, man.
Yeah.
Actually, kind of impressive how you're tapping.
Well, you know, the thing I realize is when I do, like, sometimes I'll do these Instagram videos or whatever, and I'm always stomping my feet, and so my camera is like, so I've gotten really good at using image stabilizer
There you go.
on my little editing software.
So my question is, when you're playing that kind of really fast music, especially when you're just soloing, you know, someone's playing some chord changes and you know what the chord changes are, but you're just soloing over them. How is your brain working? Because, I mean, you talk to me like a normal human. You're not speaking at 4,000 RPM, right?
Right.
So I'm just curious, like, what is going through your mind to be able to play something so quickly but unique and apparently intentional? Because I think if I try to play that fast, it wouldn't turn out the same.
Sure. Well, with what I was just doing there, I think, I'll see if I can break it down. I like to think about, especially if I'm playing, and this kind of goes with solos too, but especially if I'm playing with a groove, no matter the tempo, I try to break things up in fours, especially if I'm playing in 4/4, but time signature aside, I like to think of it as like a couple questions and then an answer as far as the parts. So like what I was just doing there might be like, Okay, so if we ended up something like this. That would be like 2 questions, right? So maybe I can throw in one more and then I'll answer with something. So. Right, so you throw in like a thing at the end of each phrase and it kind of just wraps itself around and you end up with a nice part.
Yeah. Well, tell me about those things though. Are they like just licks that you have memorized, or you're just altering them? You're really familiar with what sound your fingers are going to make when they make those motions?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just digging out of what I have in my bag right now.
Okay.
You know, for like I've given myself a key. I'm in A. I can think of A dominant sounds. I can think of A minor sounds. Whatever you'd like. We haven't really totally established that, so I'm just kind of flowing here. But the cool thing about a lot of what I'm doing is it's coming from the blues. Mm-hmm. It might not sound like blues necessarily, but it's kind of all blues. And what's great about blues is you can mix minor thirds and major thirds together.
Yes.
So I might play a groove that's based around an A7 chord, has a major third in it, but that's going to sound cool over it too. It's all sort of that James Brown kind of funk blues kind of thing.
What's that song? Funk 47? Is it?
Funk 49.
Funk 49.
James Gang.
Major minor thing going on.
That's a minor lick over a dominant A7 chord, you know?
Yeah.
So if I'm improvising, I mean, of course, hopefully I know the changes.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of goes with the same type of thing. When I'm phrasing, I try to think of like a couple things. Well, not think of them, but I try to play a couple things, and then the fourth thing, or maybe the third thing or something, sort of puts a bow on what just happened.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I mean, I can try to relate.
Okay. Well,
I mean, like sonically, yeah, I can totally relate.
It's kind of like the idea of putting a period at the end of a sentence.
Yeah.
And then you pause for effect.
Yeah.
Maybe. I like to think of good solos as little miniature songs or compositions.
Yeah.
You know, they kind of have a beginning, a middle, and end. They sort of tell a story. They keep you interested. I think that's the hardest thing as an improviser, is playing in a way that keeps people engaged with what's going on, so it doesn't sound like you're just up there practicing.
Well, just even when I'm like playing by myself, I'm like constantly bored and like trying to break out of that.
Sure. Oh man, I get it. I know the feeling.
Interesting for myself.
Yeah, I totally get it, man. I mean, it's you know, and being in a band like Snarky Puppy, or playing with any of the people that I do play with, they will push you if things get stale.
Yeah.
And that's always really good, especially if you are not the soloist. If you're listening to the soloist and reacting to what they do, then it kind of makes the solo section of the tune more involving of everyone else on the bandstand. And you know, that's just super important, is just to be listening. Even when you are soloing, if you find yourself getting like, well, shoot, I don't know what to do now, well, play off of what someone else is playing. Yeah. Don't think about yourself the whole time. You know, include the band.
Yeah.
You know, be a friend.
You can spare the brain power.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what I had my eyes closed there, so I probably wasn't really thinking very hard. I looked like I was trying to reach for some sort of fancy legato thing with a lot of distortion, probably, but we don't really have that.
You're going
luxury.
to break down a song just from that face, aren't you?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good one.
So I just have a couple more questions for you, and then we'll...
Cheekbones are great. That's a good one. It looked like an exhumed corpse, I suppose.
Ran a lot of track before that.
Yeah, right.
And then so we're going to break it down. I'm going to ask you a couple more questions. We're going to pass it off to the audience and let them ask some questions, and then we'll just jam out.
Cool, man. Yeah, I want to hear more of your stuff.
Cool. So you're among the class of people that is like ranked. Like when I think about like hunters, you know, you can think of like a few outstanding, because I love the hunting world. Like Cameron Haynes is like a, you know, superstar hunter. You probably don't know his name. Or you think computer scientists. You think Linus Torvalds. He's like, you know, kind of a superstar in the area. But you don't get. No one puts together top 10 lists for hunters or computer scientists.
Huh.
But guitarists.
I bet they do.
Well,
probably
I'm sure
a magazine out there that does. I'm sure there's one for coders or something like that.
I'm sure there's a blog that ranks them somewhat,
Okay.
but nothing like guitarists.
Well,
And so, how does that affect you? Do you like strive to be like #1 guitarist?
I
in your
don't
category?
think about that at all.
Okay.
I ended up on a list that there's a very popular YouTube music guy named Rick Beato, and he's a brilliant musician and producer and just musical mind, just a really smart guy. And he put me on a list of his top 10. He said it was his, I don't know if it was top, but it was my 10 favorite Instagram guitar players. And I was like, Rick, I play gigs, man. I don't just play. No, I didn't say that. I was very, very, very humbled by it, just because all, you know, the guys on there were great, and but so that was cool to be included in a thing like that, just because I was included with guys who I liked and looked up to and whatnot. But I wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think about it, because when people ask me who my top 5 favorite guitar players are, it's like, well, today it's, you know, these guys, or tomorrow it's going to be these guys. So, you know, I did, like I said, I was an athlete for so much of my life that I think I'm kind of done with the whole competition thing.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In music, you can't really, it's totally subjective.
Yeah.
You know, at any time Guitar World or whoever puts out a list.
Yeah, it's pretty hard
you
to
know, it's like, what do you, all right, I guess. I remember Rolling Stone had one that was like the top 100 greatest guitar players of rock and roll, and like everyone thought they got it wrong, you know. It's like, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but it's humbling to be a part of something like that and to know that people hold you in that regard, but I don't make it a priority when I pick up the instrument to end up on a list, you know. All
right, so my last question for you is about your future. Like, what's your 5-year plan, 10-year plan? Where do you see yourself going?
Sure. Well, I'm still very involved with Snarky Puppy, but this past kind of year, I've been really involved in my solo project and recording that music and touring that music, which is something that I kind of always dreamed about doing when I was 13 or 14, and now I'm kind of doing it.
Yeah.
And so that's really kind of exciting and terrifying at the same time, because, you know, I'm in charge.
Yes.
And it's all kind of on me to kind of make it happen. It's a very, very different scenario than being a sideman or a session guy or even a band member, you know, when you're the artist or the band leader or whatever. But it's cool, and I'm going to keep kind of pushing that. I did this baritone guitar record that I put out. I have another project of solo material that's a little bit more melody oriented than that one. That one's more groove based.
Yeah,
so I have this next project called Things of That Nature that's coming out in the fall. And
is that closer to Spark and Echo?
Yeah, it is. It's much closer to what I normally do, or what you might see me do live if you come to a solo gig. And when I say solo, I just mean like Mark Lettieri trio. So there's actually 3 of us, or sometimes 4 of us, but it's under my own name, which still sounds weird to say. But
congrats.
Well, thanks. So I'll be doing more of that this year, splitting my time between that and Snarky, and then, you know, in 5 years, I want to do everything I'm doing now, just at a higher level. You know what I mean? Just more of it, with something little cooler, different things happening.
So you're constantly pushing yourself to kind of change your style, improve it?
Well, I'm always trying to become better at something. You know, a lot of my focus is on composition and writing cool songs.
Yeah.
Cool instrumental songs. That's what I want to do. And if I can do it at a decent level with the guitar and make the guitar sound cool, then I've achieved that as well. Sure. So, you know, and heck, man, I'm a dad, so I'm going to be doing the dad thing, man. I got a little kiddo. So those things are all happening and will continue, you know, for forever, I hope.
Yeah, and so you don't see yourself losing any passion at all in that area?
No, I mean, there's definitely times of serious frustration in this business and feelings of defeat and, you know, like you suck.
Well, it's
like I'm, you know, sometimes I wake up and I'm like, I'm the worst guitar player in the world. Like, nothing is going right. Like, I had kind of a crappy show for me last night, and it was just like kind of bummed, you know.
Yeah. I feel
but
you.
you get up and you do it again, you know.
My wife's in the crowd here. She's a professional harpist, and she goes through that kind of thing all the time. She's really a lot better than she thinks she is. But
that's the torment of being an artist, man. It's like or a musical person or whatever you want to call it. It's you're constantly having to get this thing that's inside of you out, and then once it's out, you have to sit there and go, what just happened with this, and how can I keep doing this, and like sustain it and keep regenerating it and
you have
moving
to keep pushing
forward with it. Yeah, I mean, because it's so easy to get discouraged doing something where you are almost relying on other people's acceptance of it, which is weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would do this if nobody listened or cared or watched my Instagram videos.
Well, you did in college. You kept playing.
I guess so.
Cool. All right. Well, we have a few minutes for questions, and then we're going to jam out. So if someone could grab the mic up front here and
That's a microphone?
Yeah, it's a microphone.
God, you guys have the coolest stuff. Can I work here?
Yeah, dude. Get you on a computer.
What would I do? I don't know.
I don't know. Write some for loops.
Talking to the box.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, we got.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, you're right here.
Hey, thanks for coming. My name is Mike. So my question is, how do you incorporate or do you ignore the trends in like what people tend to listen to now, 10 years ago, 10 years from now, and like what you create? How do you put those together?
Yeah.
And like try to stay
That's a
relevant?
cool question. I try to keep somewhat of a pulse on current music. I listen to my friends. A lot of my favorite current artists are people that I are in my circle, in my network. And so I'm always kind of inspired by what they do, and I'm not sure what they're inspired by, but I know what I like, and I know what I hopefully sound good doing. And so as long as what I'm doing comes from a place of personal integrity, I feel like that's what I need to be focused on, versus maybe picking up a trend or not picking up a trend. If something doesn't feel natural to me, or if I feel like I'm doing something because I should be doing something, or playing away because I think a certain group of people might like me more if I could also do that, I try not to do that, and I think hopefully that's what's helping me develop my own sound, whatever that is yet. I haven't quite found it, but it's just kind of coming from a place of integrity and not. So maybe what I'm saying is I try not to jump on some kind of trend if it doesn't feel natural, because let the people that feel natural doing it do that. It's I would rather be me to be me, I guess. But yeah, no, it's a great question, man. Thanks. Yeah. Toss the butt. Can you literally throw that thing?
Yeah. So it's got an accelerometer in it, and while it's being thrown, it turns off the mic.
Yeah, right. Well, I got one. So.
Thanks for coming. My name's John. I'm going to the show tonight also.
Awesome.
Snarky Puppy show.
Cool.
My question is about your solo work. Questions about trying to improve as a guitarist, the relationship between trying to improve your technique and licks and jamming and things like that, and the songwriting aspect of composing and writing harmonies and melodies that you think are beautiful or kind of influential for you. Because to me those are a little bit different, so I'm wondering about kind of the relationship between those for you.
Like the relationship between composing and then just practicing your stuff?
Yeah.
I sort of exist in a weird middle ground, because I find that anytime I sit down to actually practice a technique or something, it turns into music. And so to my detriment, it sort of detracts from the technical aspect. So I'll maybe get 80% of the way there and be like, oh cool, I can make music with this now, and then I'll go compose with it or something. And so I'm kind of always waving that line. Sometimes I'll just be thinking about composition, and then I'll have to figure out how to play it. That sometimes I'll write a solo section for myself just because I love the chords, and I'm like, crap, I gotta blow over this now. And then I have to okay, well I was thinking melodic minor here and yada yada. So I'm always kind of in between.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, man. You got it.
We got time for about 3 more questions, so I'm sorry we got a hard deadline coming up.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
I'm curious, why did you choose to do an album with baritone guitar as opposed to regular? And how did it change how you thought about the music and playing?
Right on. Well, actually, this kind of answers your question a little bit. That was something that felt super unique to me, and something that I felt translated really well with what I was currently feeling, as a musician. And it kind of married. So for those of you guys who don't know what a baritone guitar is, it's an electric guitar, but it's tuned down a fourth or a fifth. So the neck is a little bit longer, and tone-wise, it sits somewhere in between a guitar and a bass. And you might hear them on like spaghetti western soundtracks, those old Italian, sound. Enrico Morricone. I can always never say the poor guy's name right. Morricone. I'm an Italian. I'm screwing his last name. His soundtracks are in country music or whatever. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna play funk on this thing. I'm gonna play Minneapolis style funk on a baritone guitar because I hadn't heard anyone do it, and it just sort of like there was literally one in my little guitar rack that I bought because I needed it for session work, and I was playing stuff one day that was just like. Funk, and I was like playing on the baritone. I was like, this is a thing. This is a vibe, and so that became that. And I put the record together strictly to challenge myself to see how many cool rhythm guitar parts I could fit in 2.5 minutes per song, which is going to be really hard to replicate live, but I'll figure it out. And it's just kind of become a thing, and so yeah, that was it. It happened because I started posting videos of me kind of playing on these demos on the internet, and everyone was like, when's the record? I was like, what do you mean the record? They're like, well, you're going to make a record of this, right? And I said, yes. And so I was like, well, shoot, I probably should do this. And it became a really cool thing. So I'm going to do another one. I'll probably record one next year and just make it a biannual thing. Deep Volume 2, deeper. I got to get away with, I don't want to call it that. That's lame. We'll figure it out. Depth, I don't know, whatever.
You have to get a bassatone guitar.
A bass, yeah. What is that?
I don't know, I just made that.
Oh, okay. I was like, I've not heard of such things.
Just curious to hear about your opinion on being on the West Coast and then moving to Texas and how that went into your development, more from like a genre and influences perspective. Obviously, you met a ton of people there, but just the vibes of the sounds going on the West Coast versus Texas.
Right. Well, I really came of age as a guitar player in Texas. I was playing. I left for college at 18. So prior to that, I was playing with my friends. We played backyard parties. We played at church. We did all the things that teenage musicians do, and we were just listening to everything. What was cool about the Bay at the time, there was still kind of like a jazz funk thing happening in the Bay. Like Charlie Hunter was there playing, and some other musicians. So we would go up to the Warfield and stuff and see all these different bands and the Shoreline Amphitheater. So we got to see, the cool thing about being in the Bay Area is that like everyone plays here. So we got to see all of our favorite artists from B.B. King to Aerosmith to whoever come through. So that was great just as a young kid to just be able to see all these heroes and stuff that were coming through. When I got to Texas, I was then thrust into playing with musicians who had a sound that I really liked. The R&B thing, the funk thing, the soul thing. That's where I really discovered that was in Texas. And Texas Dallas specifically has a very specific swagger as far as the way that they groove on R&B. And Erykah Badu's sound is from there. There's so many other artists that have roots in Texas, Dallas area. And so I probably credit a lot of my sound to being there versus being in California. But I don't know. I probably should come back and spend some time on the West Coast as an adult, as a working musician now, and see what I can soak up. It's funny. I have influences from the Bay. I got to play with one of them last night. He's an incredible guitar player named Jubu Smith, who's an Oakland guy, and he came and sat in with Snarky Puppy. And he's like a hero of mine, and he's from the Bay. So it's all over, man. Cool. Weather's better here, though.
It is nice. Yeah, one more. Here we go.
Hey, so my question is, like, it seems like a lot of your career development has kind of come from just being in a place, meeting somebody. It's very relational. Would you say that's been like most of it, or were there also times where you were very conscious about like, this is the thing I want to do next, and I'm going to place myself here to do it?
Sure, it's definitely both.
Yeah.
A lot of the things I've figured out, it's because I had a goal. And I think just even the jam session thing, like I went to those because I knew I would meet musicians. I went, I knew I could probably kind of get a gig from one of them, and I did, and then after the country thing was kind of done, I would go to these jam sessions that were more R&B specific because I was in love with that music and I wanted to play with those musicians. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know I was going to end up in Erykah Badu's band because of it, but I thought I would have a chance at that. So it was somewhat calculated, and not in a negative like I'm going to schmooze my way to the top or anything like that, but like if, I wanted to play with Erykah Badu, her music director had a jam session. So I drove all the way out there and sat around and then would sit in on a couple tunes and did that for a long time until they were like, hey man, summer tour, you busy? I said, no, let's go. And so, that's just sort of how it happens. It's very relational in this industry.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Well, really appreciate having you on.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you
Well,
guys for spending your lunch break with us.
Yeah, we'll jam for a second and we'll head out. Fair warning, you've already heard me play. I'm total hack guitarist.
Come on,
but
man.
it's been my dream to be able to play with someone like you. So
Let's do like a cool little blues thing.
yeah,
About what key you like?
like a 1-4-5 and A or something.
Yeah. Here, I'll set it up. You want me to set it up?
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, just solo, all chord. Yeah, man. Right on. That was fun. Absolutely. Heck yeah, dude.